Okay, it is 8:31 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is today, Wednesday, July the 14th, and welcome to week number two of Introduction to Corrections. My name is Richard Wright, and I'm your professor, and I'll again be with you for the next 2 point, uh, well, really, uh, there's about two, 5.2 weeks or to the end of the term, which I'll show you that date. I do want to comment about last week. Um, some of you who've turned in your assignments need to make sure that you remember what I said about providing citations in the body of your paper and references at the end, a cover page, and APA formatted. I talked about that last week, but I want to remind you to maximize your points. If you don't have any citations to support your statements, you will end up in emerging. And I have said that the key thing is to get to mastery on the rubric, and that's how I grade. And then I also include comments to remind you and let you know. So for the weeks to come, the next weeks 2 through 6, you want to make sure that you provide that information so you can maximize your grades. Because the biggest portion of your grade comes from the written assignments, followed by you have your quizzes as well. Remember, when you take your quizzes, study the materials in the module, do your reading, check the PowerPoints, and above all, make sure you get your assignments in on time according to what's in the announcement and according to what's on the calendar, even more important, that I share with you each week. And I will be doing that today. So let's get those points up. Let's fix those issues. Also, I want to let students know that we on Mondays, when your assignments are due on that Sunday before, such as last Sunday, your assignments that were due, when I graded them, not this past Sunday, but when I graded, well, they were due this past Sunday. And so if you turn in your assignments after that, you will probably see a 0. And the reason why the 0 is there is to alert you to the fact that you did not complete the assignment. And there's also so that the advisors will be able to see that you did not. One of the critical things that you should consider, as I shared week 1, is to make sure that you get your assignments in on time, because it's a short term. It goes very fast, and you need to do everything you can to maximize your grade by getting your assignments in quality and on time. Quality is following the things I discussed in the lectures, as well as supporting what's in the rubric and the module itself. And make sure that you do so. Very, very, very important. But when you do see that 0, excuse me, when you do see that 0, one of the things that you should be aware of right away is that you can still turn in that assignment, because that 0 will not necessarily be permanent, because of the fact that I'm alerting you, as I said, to the fact that you have not turned in the assignment, and give you an opportunity to be able to get it in. Of course, you will lose points for that. Remember what I talked about each day. You will lose 10% of your grade for late written assignments, late quizzes. For late posts, you lose 1 point each day. And the point of the matter is what gives you a chance to do so is extenuating circumstances. Working a lot of hours is not adequate. unless you're in the military or something like that. But most of the time, I don't give extenuating circumstances to people who will tell me that on Sunday they didn't get a chance to do their assignment, when you're aware of when your assignment is done at the beginning of the week, and you just have to time management and begin to get those things done. So those are some points that I wanted to mention today before we get to the next module. So let me share my screen with you. Okay, and here we go. And I'm going to take you to student preview mode so you can see what I see. So then when we come in, it gives us at the top the emails that you can see. This is the grades that you can see, the discussions that you can see, and then of course the calendar. And then this brings us back here. So let's start out with the emails. These are the emails that only you can see. The emails from week 1, and you will be able to see those as well. Shows 2, but there are really 3. Okay, the welcome announcement, as well as the live lecture, which you can see here. Okay, so each week you'll be able to, each day you'll be able to see those. Remember what I said, that if you have an issue, you can call me, text me, email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. How do you reach me? My phone number is listed in the syllabus and on the course homepage, so that you'll be able to reach me. Okay, so now let's take a look at the assignments. As you can see here, this was from last week. This doesn't show your grades. This is showing as if I was a student, and it shows that my assignments were due on the 11th. That's what I was talking about earlier. And I didn't submit any. So anyway, that's what happens. So now week 2, the assignments are correctional systems. You have a discussion post that we'll be discussing adult and juvenile correction systems. You have a quiz and live lecture. So what you have added is this is the first week for discussions, and I will appropriately discuss that in just a few minutes. So that's where you'll find your grades. And then the chat box, you have the lounge where you've responded to other students. And then you have the chat box down here where you'll see what I posted, and nobody of course responded to it, but I do recommend you to take a look at that course chat. But this week we have discussions. Okay, so now let's see what you see for the discussions. So as you know, you will not see a discussion post until you post a discussion, because I have what we call post first, which means that before you can see anything as far as other students have posted, you post yours first. And the reason for that is to make sure that you get information that is sufficient for you to make it original. The maximum grade is 30 points for that. Okay, that's roughly 15 points for initial posts and 15 points for reply posts. All right, so in this instance, you're gonna be involved with the differences between adult and juvenile correction systems, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. In your initial post, explain the differences between the two and support the selection of one of the differences by detailing a specific example of a process, including the terminology. Why do you believe that the difference is important? In the reply post, choose a peer who described the difference other than yours. Discuss whether you believe the process and terminology they provided supported the difference, and share your beliefs. Okay, and then you, of course, support it. Now, remember, discussion posts are due, and it says by the 17th. Now, what that really means, that's the date for your reply post. Your initial post, you will see in a few minutes by the calendar, will be due as of yesterday, which was the 13th, and every Tuesday thereafter. Your discussion post should be not yes or no, should not be short, should reflect critical thinking that you have completed, and you want to make sure that you did that accordingly. Okay. All right, so that's your discussion assignment. Again, the initial post is due the 13th, which was yesterday, and the reply post due the 17th, which is should be Saturday. Should be Saturday. If not, I'm going to double check and make sure that I didn't make a mistake. I will fix that. Okay. So that's your discussion. Let's go back to keep going in and out of class. Okay, let's enter the student preview again. Okay, let's go back to course content. Okay. Remind you again that we'll get to announcements in just a few minutes. View the course and institution tools. I told you about resources, the syllabus again, and then tutoring, which I understand that Rose, our department chair, has set up several of you for that already, so that's a good thing. And then again, this reminds you of my office hours, which says you can text me, call me, email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day, and there's the phone number there. And it reminds you that you're required to conduct research for all papers, and that the sole source of your papers should not be the textbook. You'll lose 2 points for failure to conduct research. And then all papers should be in APA. We've talked about that in detail. Okay. Before we get to, let's see, let's take a look at the course calendar. I like to do the month view. And you can see right here, this is where we are, where your initial post was due yesterday, and that your lecture is taking place right now, the 14th. And then, as I said earlier, the 17th, so I was correct. It is due on Saturday. Okay. And then your written assignments, your live lecture phrase, your quiz, and your written assignment are due on the 18th. Okay. All right. And that's it for that. All right. We're going to get into details in just a few minutes. Let's get into the announcement. You can see the week 2 announcement. And here it is in the second week, which I need to, oh, that's right, I can't edit it in student mode. But in, I'm going to have to go and type that, right? Module will deal with adults, juveniles, and criminal behavior. And chapter 6, 12, and 17, by the way, I sent you the PowerPoints for that, which you should have. And we're going to talk about the theories impacting correction, incarceration of the criminal experience, special populations, adult and correction systems, and then finally your vocabulary review. Again, be aware that the discussion assignment is adult and correction systems, which we just talked about, and that the initial post is due on Tuesday and the reply post on Saturday, as I said earlier. Finally, then complete the written assignment, correction systems, and do the quiz. Okay, and of course, so you're going to give the key phrase as well. You already know that. All right, and then you're going to continue to be strong, and then you're going to follow my motto: adversity is the springboard of success, which I provide the details discussed in week 1. And I also have an announcement that remains here that you can see the detailed video about myself as well. Okay, so that's the announcement for this week. Okay. Adversity springboard success, there it is right there. You can take a look at that as well. So let's take a look at module 2 and the assignments. So the written assignment, correction systems. So what you're going to do is do research on corrections as a practitioner and follow and work with offenders to reduce recidivism. For those who don't know what that word means, that's a person who repeats and comes back after going through the system once. It says, however, with this knowledge comes the realization that our correction system is not a one-size-fits-all. And the reason is because there's no cookie cutter, because individuals are based upon categories. And even those individuals in those categories are not cookie cut, but we treat those individuals based upon their own needs. As you already know, each person is different from another person. And so what we do is we deal with what we call special populations, such as dealing with women, juveniles, the elderly, mental illness, those with developmental disabilities, and veterans, to name a few. We also have drug offenders as well, substance abusers. So select one of the special populations from this list that you see here in front of you, from substance abusers, offenders with mental illness, offenders with developmental disabilities, offenders with HIV/AIDS, women, juveniles, elderly offenders, long-term offenders, military veterans, and sex offenders, and create an action plan. Create an action plan to provide an overview of the characteristics that define the group as a special population. That's the first part of your action plan. You have to provide what the characteristics are of that group, not just define it, but provide the characteristics. And the second part, and you're going to see in the rubric in a minute, describe an issue that impacts your special population in the system. Explain a solution to address that issue or issues. Provide credible sources. Remember what I said? What are credible sources? That's another way of saying citations. Support your statements, support your information with the research that you conducted and utilizing the sources that you discover. Remember, try to minimize using the textbook, even though you can use it, but our goal is to increase your ability to be able to conduct research, because it's going to enhance your ability to understand, and the knowledge that you obtain will be really greater by following that route. Helps you with your critical thinking as well. Remember, credible sources and information literacy. Remember, know Wikipedia. Make sure you have credible sources, but cite them in the body of your paper. Don't just throw one in. Cite it in there where you got the information, along with some critical thinking, of course, and provide ideas in professional language with proper spelling and grammar. Okay. All right. It must be, I said, it must be a Word document. Must be a Word document. All right. Now, here's the rubric that I want to bring back to your attention. Okay, I'm going to show you the rubric on the system that I want you to see the whole thing, because you can see it here, but I want to show you the variations on it. So let's for a minute um, get out of the student mode. No, okay, let's go back. Well, before we do that, let's just do discussions. I'll come back to that in just a minute. I already told you this, and you've already seen this. All right, so you know about the discussion assignments. The quiz, I'm not going to open it because it will actually start to show you the quiz. It's time for 30 minutes, and then your live classroom recording. Now, if you look at this, right now it'll show the link. And if you click on that link, it will put you, and I won't, because it will create a problem in our WebEx classroom. Will have me record it in there twice, and I don't want that. But this is for each week. Now, after this lecture is over, I changed that to show you where the recorded lecture will be, as you saw last week. And each week you will see that. And of course, you know that is due on Sunday. No, the live lecture is recording is due Sunday. Okay, for 6 points total. Okay, so now let me go back to the rubric. Now I want to get out of that, and let's go back in, and let me show you week 2. Okay, here we go. What I just shared with you a few minutes ago, but I want you to see the full rubric, and it's going to show up just a minute. And here it is, and it shows you momentarily. It will pop up. There we go, and it shows you the criteria column, and it tells you from mastery all the way over to emerging. And so I already told you about this, the characteristics of the special population that you select. You want to provide an exemplary overview. And when I say exemplary, I always tell my students, forget about these other 3 columns. Focus on this one. I wish I could just put this in the trash and this in the trash and this in the trash, but they don't want me to do that because they want you to see what you did wrong. If you did something wrong, because I will put you in one of these categories. So let's say if you don't have any credible sources, see what this says? You can get in here with credible sources. You can get down here with minimal. And here you have incomplete and confusing, missing supporting evidence from credible sources. And I already told you what those were. So it's very important from the very beginning that you understand. You should be in that habit though, because you write your papers in APA and APA requires citations in the body and references at the end. The academic integrity video that I shared with you last week reminds you of the importance of avoiding plagiarism by citing your sources in the body as citations and then references at the end. Exemplary description of issues with thorough alignment. And then there you go. See the credible sources again. Again, you know what'll happen if you don't. You'll end up emerging. So when I go through your paper and I see no credible sources, you're going to end up over here automatically. That's not good. Proposed solution, provide credible sources as well. And then free from grammar and spelling and so forth and so on. So very important that you understand that. So that's the rubric. That's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure you provide those credible sources or citations, okay? All right. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Again, it's due Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, and that's it. We went over the quiz, the live recording. So now let's talk about the sections here. With the time that we have left, we have about a half an hour or so, actually 32 minutes. And then these are some of the things that I want you to pay attention to. And I want you to go over this on your own time. So theories, and then this gives us different theories. And the point of the matter is that I want to bring to you is in this section, I want you to be able to go over this in the time that you are studying the module itself. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me about it. However, I can tell you this already, that I do know that the textbook and the PowerPoints establish each of these very well. And then these are individuals who are considered as theorists. Again, I don't spend the time to go over this whole thing because it's about an hour or so. But it's things that you should be studying yourself to help you to understand the module. Don't skip it because it's not graded. So you need to understand the theories behind it. You should know them from your research, okay? Incarceration and the prison experience. Okay, so now here's what you should be aware of. When you are incarcerated, there are three models that actually overlap with each other. The custodial model, and we're going to elaborate on in a minute, the reintegration model, and the rehabilitation model. So what should be taking place from the time that you're in custody is preparing you by rehabilitating you, taking you and turn you into a new direction, turn you so that you don't become a recidivist, to try to decrease recidivism, and then preparing you to reintegrate into the community that you'll go through. Usually as a parolee, you'll spend the rest of your time after you get out under supervision of a probation officer, but you will be given the opportunity to help you with skills for success. So here we go in terms of how these things operate. So the custodial model itself is where prisons emphasize security through discipline or order. So the focus is to keep you behind bars and to put you in a position where you do recognize that you're being penalized. I hesitate with using the word punishment because that's almost an antiquated term, because the goal in prisons should not be to punish, but to give you a balance between um, making you stop and think. That's why actually penitentiary, pentent was the original word for it, where you went in and you were given time to think about what you did. But now we're in more of the correction mode. That's why it's called corrections. And the goal is to help you correct the mistakes that you made so that you don't make those mistakes again, so that you don't find yourself back in the system, giving you the ability to be able to get a fresh start. The rehabilitation model is where prisoners have treatment programs to reform, address the needs of the individuals. Remember, I said it's individualized. So if you have a drug problem, you get drug treatment. If you have mental health problems, those mental health issues need to be addressed. If you have both of them, they need to be addressed. I can tell you already that unless those two are met, then you can release a person and you can give them all the education, which is one other form, and they will still become a recidivist because of the fact that you haven't dealt with the actual need of those individuals. You need to be able to give them a trade or a vocation. That's why people are learning to do hair, work on automobiles, become carpenters, learn how to work on computers so that you can learn how to maybe work your way into information technology or IT. The key thing is to reform you, is to give you a new direction. I like to use as my clock, as I share with my students, if you go at the top 12 o'clock, that's where you start out at. And so the more you're in there, you move to 1 o'clock, and that's helping you to get into a 180. And then you move to 2. 3 o'clock is fair, but the problem with 3 o'clock is that you can see where you came from, and then you can still see where you're going. But anytime you can look in one direction and see where you came from, that creates a problem. So you're halfway home. Then you get to 4, 5. Finally, when you get to 6, that's the 180 of the circle of 360. All right. You then stay on that position and grow on that, because you, on either side, you really can't see where you came from. But you want to stay there and you want to grow on that spot and be able to go in a new direction in life. So when I tell people, people make mistakes and says, "Oh, you do a 360." No, that puts you right back where you started, and you don't want to do that. So you do the 180 in terms of that. Or as I like to say, the clock, you do the 6 o'clock time. Reintegration emphasizes tying you to your family and your community to help you deal with your change and to turn you from a bad citizen into a productive citizen, so that you are a contributor to the community and not one who hurts the community. And this talks about the history of fortresses to protect the public and put you in a rough situation. Now, there's what we call medium to high risk security purposes. Modern prisons involve dealing with safety, of course, and the prison population is divided so that you can deal with the behavior issues of those individuals. Low risk populations like juveniles and females and low-risk males tend to be more of a campus. So you don't have the huge fence, big walls, towers, and so forth. And the public is secure, and the inmate is not likely to create internal strife, because they will then be able to give them something to help rehabilitate them and prepare them for reintegration. Here are the different models. So you have the maximum security. These are where you commit the most serious offenses, and there are limits to minimize escape and violence. You have the big walls, the barbed wire, you have the towers with the guards. The mediums are less rigid. And also, by the way, in the strict ones, you spend less time integrating with other individuals, a very minimal amount of time. You get more time in the medium, and give you opportunity to have individuals and visitors as well. In the minimum, you have more freedom for offenders and visitors because of what we talked about earlier. Okay. So it tells you what their classifications are. So the maximum security prison is where the organization is set up to minimize the possibility of escape or violence, and strict limits on freedom of offenders and visitors. That's what I said earlier. The medium, designed to prevent escape and violence, but the restrictions are less rigid. And then finally, the minimum security, where there's a lot of freedom, consistent with the concept of incarcerations. Okay. So I'm not going to go over this too much, but I am going to show you something by the chart. The 5 factors that are involved with prisons are the closed quarters. These are problems that create the ability to, how should I say, adversely affect success for inmates, because you're in close quarters. It's been shown that when you're in close quarters with too many people, you're not very successful. Inadequate supervision because of the budgetary costs, and you deal with the situation that many of the prisons have individuals who are either sexual predators, or gangs is a big issue that's faced, and there's not enough um, um, guards or correction officers to adequately meet the needs. The design of the prison itself, because your freedom is taken away, so to speak. Availability of weapons. Unfortunately, weapons, shanks, these are homemade knives, guns, and other weapons are smuggled into these facilities. And then, of course, the housing aspects of it. So it's a place where you're going to have some issues that you're going to be facing, and you're going to have some issues that involve gangs and racism and other factors. Uh, Prison violent factors, as I said, inadequate supervision, the design that promotes rather than inhibits victimization, easily accessible weapons, housing of violent prone individuals, and overall high levels of tension because individuals are placed in closed quarters. Okay. So you're going to look at these various special populations that you're going to have to deal with when you're considering the prison experience. It's more like a gumbo than anything else, because you get a variety of individuals with a variety of problems. All right, so let's talk about the special populations a little bit more. We've kind of alluded to them in the assignments, but let's help you out here with this. So you can hit this button. So what is a special population? A group of offenders with unique needs, issues, and concerns. And I've told you what those individuals are in our assignment. The juvenile and female populations have 7 prevalent special populations. And these populations may be designed based on living areas, caseloads, staffing, and the needs within each of these populations has to be addressed to reduce the risk they represent to the community. In other words, taking them to a point where they're not recidivists, where they're not going to want to return back. Give them something based upon the population itself. So types of special populations are substance abusers, and I already talked about that. 4 out of 5 in jail, listen, 4 of 5 people in jail were high when they committed their crimes. Stolen to support their habit, had a history of alcohol and drugs. I teach drugs and crimes, and I remind my students that the course is called Drugs and Crimes is because crime goes with drugs. In other words, individuals don't head out to become criminals, but when they become addicts, addicted to drugs or alcohol, they will commit offenses to get the money to buy the drugs. And so it says while 2% of the US population abuses drugs, over half of those in prison admit to doing so. Addicts often commit property crimes, and that's the key thing. They want to robbery. Those are the toughest ones. Burglaries. They like theft, especially. The key is not to hurt people, but to get what they need to support that habit. So in the 80s, we had a longer prison sentence for drug possession and sales offenses, and that kind of led to the overpopulation, and they're moving away from some of the categories of dealing with that. So let's talk about substance abusers. And 2, we have drug courts. I represented many individuals in drug court. And one of the things about drug court that is really unique is that it provides an second chance for individuals where you can receive treatment services while you still remain in the community. It's almost like being on probation. And actually, most of the time, those individuals are placed on probation or supervision. While alcohol is legal, alcohol abuse contributes to 100,000 or more deaths annually. Driving under the influence, for example, is a leading offender. Alcohol is more closely associated with crimes of violence, where you have domestic assaults than any illegal drug. Safety of officers is a concern, as many alcoholics become violent when they drink. Again, remember, it's the substance that causes those individuals. It's like the, I'm going to get ahead of myself. Developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, or where individuals have trouble learning because of issues with their brain. 2 to 3% of the population has developmental disabilities, and it's higher among the corrections populations. So imagine those people already compounded and brought together, and you have more of these types of people. It's going to be very volatile. There is no proven link between the disability and propensity for criminal behavior. May not know that breaking the law as a or others as a joke or secure something. In other words, these people are used. They become victims just like the people that they feed off of. Offenders with developmental disabilities may commit a crime for something they want or need. They don't think quickly. They'd rather do it by a criminal way, and again are property crimes. Often, while incarcerated, they become the sexual objects and so forth. Okay. Age offenders. Age offenders um, get result from tough sentencing or the mandatory 3 strikes and you're out. Habitual Criminals Act and truth in sentencing and natural life with no possibility of parole. These are individuals that are what we call long terms. They're lifers, we call them, or pretty much lifers. Elderly, it says approximately 24% of those have sentences more than 25 years. As I have said before, the longer you're in prison, the more you learn about becoming a criminal. Elderly offenders are individuals over 55 years of age. 10% of the prison population um, consists of elderly offenders. A year of incarceration is very expensive for someone over 55 because they have medical needs. Attributed to a more significant number of people serving long-term sentences. Require special accommodations, like such as lower bunks, grab bars in cells, in showers, separation from younger who could prey on them as well. So these individuals come in almost like babies, but remember, senior citizens. Medical care, heart disease, stroke, cancer are all things that affect elderly offenders. Um, and so uh, it's tough. Um, Release preparation, it says, to the community or hospice that includes other government agencies dealing with Social Security, Medicare, and so forth. Research indicates as people age, they become less dangerous, but remember, become more of a predator. So that's the elderly. Offenders with AIDS and HIV, because of the fact that people are raped in facilities. Um, there's it's not easy to protect those individuals. Then the medical stuff that's needed. HIV is not passed through casual contact. The key way to prevent transmission is by knowledge. And so you have offenders with HIV, which require certain kind of treatment to minimize the transmission of the disease and the medical care that goes with it as well. Then you have those who have served our country. This is sad. 130,000 military vets served time in prison. Think about that. Approximately 8% of those are incarcerated. But think about it. You've gone out and served your country, and things have happened that you're not taking care of adequately, the needs that you have as a result of maybe the post-traumatic stress syndrome, PSTD, or other illnesses. You may lose limbs, all kinds of things. You may have mental issues that develop from the violence that you saw. It's rough, and you should be taken care of. But unfortunately, too many end up in prison. 99% of males from 35 to 54, 54% are 99% male, 54% 35 to 54, 50% white, high school education, and convicted of violent offenses. And recidivism rate is high. A high rate of our mental illness, nearly half of our mental illness comes from this special population, and substance abuse also is heavily involved. Sex offenders, here's a myth. Typically, people who commit violent sex crimes victimize unsuspecting strangers. Actually, it's the opposite. Most sex crimes involve people that you are acquainted with and involve some kind of trickery or coercion, maybe dropping a Mickey on you or something of that nature. Certain crimes result in a requirement to be part of sex offender registry, so then those persons are listed so that the public can see who they are, and they have to register and report whenever they move. And people who are living near them are aware of who they are. They have lower than average rate of new crimes, sex crimes included, post-sentence. Okay. And so that's kind of an overview of special populations. So now we're going to home in on adult and juvenile systems and the differences between the two of them. We have about 6 more minutes. So let's talk about juvenile treatment. So juveniles are placed in the system and treated differently for many reasons, such as they're young and can be made to change. They have a high rate of resistance. Families are important to juveniles, easily influenced by their peers. That's what gets a lot of juveniles in situations. I've represented a lot of juveniles as a lawyer, and I can tell you that they did something because they were with them, or they didn't do anything and they were with them, but because they were present, they became accessories or were pulled into the system. Juveniles have little responsibility for others. As a result, the juvenile system places less emphasis on punishment and more on individualized treatment. The key thing is we want to salvage our youth. As if you take juvenile justice, you will discover that you are not arrested. The term arrest is not used. And then you will discover that you will find yourself being adjudicated, not found guilty, and that also your records can be sealed when you become adults as well, among other factors as well. The key thing in juvenile treatment is we want to give a second chance to individuals and not, as we say, throw them out. So that's just a little bit. Okay, you find out more in your research. The adult system is different. The terminology is different. The philosophy regarding juveniles differs, primarily the belief that youth have more promise to change than adults. The adult system historically and still today holds the idea that punishment is an important part of corrections and behavior change. On the other hand, the juvenile system does not value punishment and instead places significance on the potential of rehabilitation. I personally like to apply rehabilitation to both adult and juveniles. I understand the point that they're making, but the key thing is that recidivism is adversely affected by individuals who are rehabilitated as opposed to those who are just punished. So we already talked about that. And so we want to change the direction in life, as I said. So in juveniles, we provide mentors, treatment, and services. We want to do the same thing in treating and dealing with adults in the system as well. Okay, and that's that. I think we did all of that. Okay, yeah. So here's a knowledge test. Which of the following statements is correct? And we talk about juvenile petitions, formal charges, taken into custody. You're not taken into custody. Person charged. A juvenile petition. So formal charges. And so you can go to the next one. Which of the following statements is correct? Adult trial determination. It says trail, but it means trial. Determination of guilt. The formal charges. Legal basis for holding. Person charge. Determination of guilt. Okay, so that's you can go through each of those. All right, go through the whole thing. All right, so that's it for the Adult and Correction Center. We're just about out of time, so be sure that you do go through the review here. And you go through and you do each of these. Okay, and it tells you pick the correct answer. And so you go through each of these. You want to do this before you take the quiz. So your vocabulary review. Okay. So that's it. If you have any questions about anything that I've said today, feel free to reach out to me. I will be happy to address them. And so I'm going to give you a key phrase. Recidivism. Give me that for your points. Understanding what that is. Recidivism. All right, so I will be here next week on the 21st with your next lecture, and I will be again available to help you if you have any questions. Feel free to reach out to me and communicate me with any concerns you have. Have a great week. Stay safe and get those assignments completed. Good night.